Hey guys, it's Ivy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite reads of 2020. In 2020, I had a goal to read 100 books. As the end of December was coming closer, I realized I was not going to achieve that goal, so I lowered it down to 85, and then I surpassed that goal by 2 books and I read 87. So out of the 87 books I read in 2020, I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorites. My list is really in no particular order except for my top 3 favorites. Those are like my favorite of my favorites. So I'm just going to jump right in and start telling you guys. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This book is told in verse, and I listened to this on audiobook, which I really highly recommend because Jason Reynolds reads it himself, so you can interpret it the exact way that he intended it. And this is about a boy whose brother is murdered, and he gets in an elevator with a gun and he wants to punish the person who hurt his family. While he's on the elevator, he keeps getting visited by ghosts of different people in his life that have passed away. Jason Reynolds basically tells a story in a 60-second frame, meaning this all happens to the boy in 60 seconds. He has the chance to decide whether he wants to take the life of the person who took his brother's life, or if he wants to basically keep his innocence and not murder someone. Each person that visits him is dead, so he's like learning from that person what the situation will mean to him if he decides to do this. And the ending to me was open for interpretation, so I think it's a book that I can definitely see myself returning to and learning something from it every single time. The ending, really, I couldn't figure it out. Maybe I'm not as smart as other people, but I had to listen to it like 3 times because I was like, okay, but what? Because it really feels like it is open for interpretation. So maybe if you've read it, let me know your thoughts on that down below, as I would love to hear about it because I truly love this book and definitely will pick it up more than once. The next book on this list is Paper Princess by Erin Watt. This book didn't have anything meaningful about it. It wasn't something that I learned about myself or anything like that. Most people would call this a guilty pleasure, but the thing is about me, I'm not guilty about the things that I like. I like what I like and I don't have a shame in that. But this book was a disaster and I could not put it down. I could not stop reading it. It was just a fun time, and for that I really enjoyed it, and that's why it made it onto this list, because reading should be fun, and I had a lot of fun reading this even though it's a mess. It is about a girl who has never met her father, and her mother dies and she becomes a stripper, and this man shows up and is like, hey, I was your dad's best friend and he just found out about you, but he died, and so I'm gonna take care of you. So he takes her to live in his mansion with all of his very hot sons, and this is a haters to lovers trope romance novel. It's very angsty, but like I said, it's a fun time, and that's why I made it onto my favorites list. The next book I have on this list is King and the Dragonflies by Crescent City, and this is a middle grade novel, and it has a little bit of a speculative twist on it. It is about a young boy who has lost his brother quite suddenly, and he talks to his brother because he thinks he's returned to him in the form of the Dragonfly. This book also has to deal with coming to terms with your sexuality and realizing that you might like one of your friends. It also is set in Louisiana, so I really liked the setting of this book. It also has a runaway story in it, as one of his friends has run away because he's being abused at home. So there's a lot of strong, tough topics in this one for young kids. However, I think it is a really important read because I think a lot of young children are facing these realities and don't know how to come to terms with it or how to talk to the people around them. And I think this is a really important book for young readers because this is Debbie. If you have a young reader in your life, I think that this is a perfect book to introduce to them. I think that is very helpful, and it was just a very well-rounded, beautiful story, and I really enjoyed my time while I was reading it. The next book on this list is If I'm Being Honest by Austin Sigmund Broca and Emerly Wibberley, and this is a young adult rom-com. This is a book about a girl who is popular and bitchy, and she's quite mean. She wants the attention of one of her friends, and he's like, you're kind of really mean, so she decides she's going to change for him. But along the way of making amends to all these people's feelings that she has hurt, because she wants to apologize and she wants to work it out, she actually finds some new friendships, which makes it really exciting because she realizes she has things in common with these people that she has been really mean to. It was just so hilarious. There were so many laugh out loud moments, and I really enjoyed my time reading this one. It kind of teaches, well, not kind of, it does, it teaches a lesson to people to not be so quick to judge, because people that you think that you might not get along with, you can have really grand friendships with. So I really liked that aspect. I just really liked the aspect of her going down this road of making amends and apologizing for all the things that she did wrong, and I thought that was really important. And like I said, it was just so many, it had so many laugh out loud moments. Like, there is a Rocky Horror Picture Show scene that is just so great and plays a really big part in the story, and she ends up finding new romance, which was really shocking to her, but it was just such a good time, and I really enjoyed this book. And I'm actually really interested to pick more up from these authors now, because it was just a really feel-good book, and it like brought me to tears, and it was a really good novel for a good laugh. The next novel on this list is Dear Martin by Nick Stone, and this is an extremely important novel. It definitely made my favorites list as soon as I read it. I talked a lot about this in my Reading Rush vlog. It brought me to tears. Like, I felt extreme heartbreak reading this novel, and it is so important. It is a book about a boy who goes to a predominantly white school, and he faces the struggles of racism within his friends group. He faces a lot of struggles, and it is a book about him losing his best friend to a police officer who shot at them off duty. Really can't talk about this novel without being emotional. It has been months since I read this book, and I still get extremely emotional talking about it, so just know it's like left a huge imprint on my heart. And I really hope you guys pick this one up, because it is a really important novel, and I think everybody should read this. I think this book should be in schools all over the world. It's just, it was one of those books that you read it and it really sticks with you. I read 2 Katrina Leno books this year, and I was trying to decide which one to put on this list, either Everything All at Once or Horrid, which they're both about young girls dealing with struggles. Katrina Leno writes these kinds of novels extremely well, and she always puts some kind of speculative twist on them, and that's why she's one of my favorite authors. Horrid was a horror novel, and Everything All at Once was more so a lighter read. Comparing the two, I did give both books 5 out of 5 stars, but for my favorites list, I'm going to choose Everything All at Once, because I would say I definitely connected with this character a lot more. In this novel, her aunt was a famous author, like imagine like J.K. Rowling type status. She dies of cancer and leaves her behind a pack of notes, and in each note she tells her like something she wants her to do to get out of her comfort zone and have fun, you know, something as simple as eating a cupcake. I just think that the way she wrote the bond between our main character and her aunt was extremely beautiful. The paths that her aunt asked her to take were a lot of fun, and on this path she ends up meeting this boy who has kind of a secret, and he actually knows the aunt personally himself, which we want to figure out how and why and what his secret is. So everything just unfolded in such a beautiful way, and it was a complete masterpiece, and I really enjoyed this novel. The next book that made this list is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. This is a memoir and it has a bunch of Matthew McConaughey's journal entries, and I also read this on audiobook because he reads it himself, and that was just a lot of fun, just hearing his voice. I did do a full book talk for this book, so I'll leave that up above or in the description down below, or both, whatever. This book was such a good time. I laughed out loud and I learned a lot of things about myself. While this is a memoir, it is kind of a self-help book as well, because it just continuously reminds you to catch green lights and take those opportunities, and don't be discouraged if you catch a yellow or a red light, because the light will change to green and it will give you that opportunity to keep going and keep moving forward. And I just really enjoyed to see that thread move throughout Matthew's life, and this was just such a good time, and I really loved this one. Now for my top 3 favorite reads of 2020. The third one being Let's Away by Darcy Little Badger. This book wholeheartedly reminded me why I loved reading in a month where I usually have a giant reading slump, so I really enjoyed it for that aspect. This is a book about a indigenous girl who can raise the spirits of the dead, and she mostly does this with animals, because if you do this with a human spirit, they tend to come back angry because they're really mad they're dead. So predominantly the women in her family raise animal spirits. Her cousin was murdered, and while he's kind of in the in-between state, he shows up to her in spirit and tells her, "Do not believe everything they tell you about my death. I was murdered and it was by the sinister doctor, and I want you to figure out how this happened." So this is kind of a mystery book because she goes on this journey to figure out why this doctor murdered her cousin. This is a novel that has a lot of different aspects to it. It's got vampires, spirits, fairies, all kinds of magic, and it's so good. The story is so beautiful and it just unravels at such a beautiful pace, and every page is just so elegant and delicate and beautifully detailed. It's just one of those books that I really recommend to everybody. I really loved my time reading this book, and I really hope everybody picks this one up. For my second favorite book, that is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas, and I know you guys might be shocked that this was not my #1 favorite read of the year, because Sarah usually holds that spot, but somebody surpassed her this year. So this is the first book in Crescent City series. This is House of Earth and Blood, and this is a book set in a paranormal world, and we have a main character who loses her best friend, and she gets paired up with this angel detective to figure out what is going on. It's not as steamy as I thought it would be, but it is a little steamy, and the romance for me is an end game, and if we know anything about Sarah, we know anything can change at a second for the romance in this novel. I really enjoyed the villain characters in this book, and holy shit, were the plot twists mind-blowing. I was shocked. So I really loved it. It just didn't hit #1 for me this year, but it was still a favorite. My #1 favorite book of the year was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book was such a beautiful time. It is told over like a 300-year lifespan. Our main character makes a deal with the devil, and the deal is not exactly what she thought it would be, and she ends up living an immortal life, but the problem is nobody can remember her until one day this man does, and we want to know why he remembers her, who he is, what his story is, and figure all that out. So I really love this book. I did an entire review of it and I went spoilery. My favorite character in this book was Luke. He was our devil character, and I just think V. Schwab did such a phenomenal job with the story, and I love that it is a standalone. I just had such a good time reading this book. I really loved it, and that's why it made my #1 favorite of the year. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up real quickly because my battery is dying. So please let me know in the comments down below if you read it and loved any of these books. Let me know what some of your 2020 favorites were. If you made it to the end of this video, please leave me the book stack emoji in the comments down below. And as always, I hope you guys have a beautiful day. May the force be with you. Bye!